Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on live Thursdays through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, and filling in for Jack is our special co-host, Philly sports guy, Jamie Pags, as he's a regular on our show, and he's a good friend of mine, and he does a great job covering sports, Philly, and others. I mean, he's all over the place when it comes to his experience in sports. So I'm glad to have him on this Thursday with me. Great friend and a great sports guy. Welcome in, Pags.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope I live up to that billing.
Oh, listen, there's no problem here. We've done this before, Pags, and it goes pretty smooth. So for everybody out there, just to let you know, Pags is the social media director for Northeast Streaming Sports. He handles our YouTube. He's on TikTok and over 80,000 followers on TikTok alone. This guy is a powerhouse when it comes to social media. So we're glad to have him aboard on Northeast Streaming Sports in that position too. So, Pax, let's get to some of the sports news. Really interesting stuff out there. Of course, with free agency coming up, we got the draft, but we also got free agency coming up, right? And a lot of quarterbacks are up to maybe move, and some have already, I think, have already been put in a position where they're going to be moved. But there's one quarterback in particular I want to talk about first, Deshaun Watson. He comes back to the front burner because, of course, a lot of teams would love to get their hands on him because he's very talented. The Houston Texans right now didn't play him last year, paid him $10 million, but his contract will go up to $35 million this year if the Houston Texans continue to hold on to him. And the coach, Lovie Smith, says he wants this resolved right away. And for the folks at home, let me explain something to you before Pax gets into it. Watson right now is facing a grand jury investigation for legal, not civil, but legal charges filed against him. And they're going to be going over all this stuff and choose whether to indict him or not. And then on the civil suit side, he has 22 pending lawsuits. And right now he is eligible to be put under oath for deposition. So this is something new. Now he's going to have to answer questions under oath. And if he doesn't answer these questions to other teams, how should I say it, in that the other teams look favorable upon him, he's going to be stuck. And I don't think the Houston Texans are going to carry him on the books anymore. So this is a big thing happening because Watson is so talented. He would be in that first-tier quarterbacks of free agency. And Miami said, hey, listen, before we even consider bringing you on our team, you've got to clear up all this stuff. What are your thoughts, Pat?
Well, it's a lot, and there's so much that's happening now. When you have 22 counts against you civilly, and of course, that's not even talking about all the criminal charges that are involved with this. It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, obviously, I'm sure he's all lawyered up and they're all ready to go here. And from what I understand, this was supposed to take place, I thought March 12th. They're trying to push it up some so that they can get this resolved here because I think, March 15th? That's when the new contracts take place or they go into effect. And that's where things have to get done. Because like I said, there's a lot of quarterbacks that, as you said, there's a lot of quarterbacks that are in jeopardy of being moved or being dropped so they don't make that payment. And, of course, he's one of them and he's been in the news for a long time now. But a coach going into that whole situation obviously would want to get it completed.
So do you think, now we don't know for a fact, I mean, listen, you have people out there that will sue and make up allegations to get some money. We know there's people like that. And that they know that the player or company or whatever it is would rather settle than have this dragged out because it's going to cost them thousands and thousands of dollars to defend themselves. We'll get to the Cowboys about that shortly. For Watson, it's going to cost many $1,000s to defend himself, especially against 22 counts. And for him to settle would be almost an admission of guilt in the public's eyes, right? Because you didn't, they think, well, you didn't defend yourself, so you must be guilty. And that's not always the case. The case could be that he just wants he wants to push on with his life. The thing that's tricky is the grand jury. This is the tricky part that hasn't been resolved yet. And everybody says, well, why don't they just trade him? Why doesn't Houston just play him? If they did, the NFL would step in that in a heartbeat, Pags. They're not going to let him play with this all hanging above him. So I think Houston took the bullet last year for Watson, kept him on the books, but they're not going to pay $35 million this year for him, Pags.
I would agree with that. That you can't have that much dead cap space with the guy who you're going to keep and not play. So ultimately, it's worth it to either drop him or have this finalized. You need to get this finished. Obviously, they want to be able to get something for him, but it makes me wonder because even, not that Lovie Smith doesn't deserve to be a coach, but you thought that there were so many better candidates out there. And the fact that they raced to the decision of him makes me wonder if they were looking for a little bit of favor from the NFL in the process of this. And the NFL is known to do certain things like this. Like, hey, listen, you do this for us and we can kind of help you out in certain ways. Yeah. So, and it made me wonder if there was a little bit of that going on.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Pags. I agree. There's always something being said behind closed doors. We know that happens in every business. So speaking of the NFL, we all know former Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores has come up with some big allegations, not only about discrimination in hiring practices, but also tanking, being offered to tank games. I think a bonus was offered, and the lawyers say they have evidence. We don't know what the evidence is. But the NFL has retained, they brought in some big guns back. They retained former Secretary General of the United States. Loretta Lynn is on retainer right now. And she's the defense lawyer for the NFL. They're not fooling around, Pax.
You can't fool around. This is something that's got to be very, very airtight. You're talking about something that if this was to go in Brian Flores's favor, that the class action suit that would come after that would be massive, would cripple the NFL. It would cripple the NFL. Now, ultimately, I got excuse me. I have to imagine that there is a lot of validity to what Brian Flores is doing for them to say, okay, since we're going to start to go to trial about this, since this is going to get spoken about in a public manner, we got to get the best that we can to be able to go forward in this trial. There's no way that you can just poo-poo past this. And I feel that it's going to be very interesting because it's going to be the trial that discusses racism in a public manner. And that's a tough thing to do. That's a real tough thing to do. There's going to be a lot of hurt feelings across the board here. And it's a black eye for the NFL just automatically.
What do you think about the Rooney Rule, really, Pax? I mean, listen, we've all been in business, right? And in business, you hire people you're familiar with or really have connections through somebody else with. And that's just the way it's done in business. I mean, there's very few people that come from the outside and that are hired for a big position. You either know this guy, you've worked with him before, you have an idea where you want your company to go. And I'm speaking of NFL teams. They are companies, and whether we like it or not. And you will know the direction you want to go, and there's a plan in place. And then the people over the top, you say, hey, listen, because we're forced, you have to interview these guys. Now, I'm not saying that it's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea because I think people should get opportunities to do this. But the NFL is not regulated by Congress like every other business. All sports pretty much, they're not regulated. They say you take care of it. You can't draft in other businesses. That's almost illegal. You can't go in there and say, okay, you got to go to California and you've got to go to New York, even if you're from Georgia and you don't want to go. You have to go, or you're going to be traded, or you won't be able to play. No other businesses run like this in any part of the country, and they got certain privileges in the NFL that they have to take care of these things in house. Once it goes outside the NFL, once Congress gets involved, then becomes trouble for any sport, NFL, MLB, whatever sport it is. And I know the NFL does not want this to go outside its little bubble here. And I think that's going to be the hardest thing, because if this thing takes off, I've heard it won't even make it to court by some lawyers, that it will be dismissed. This is what I've heard. But if it does go through, Congress gets involved, the NFL is in a lot of trouble then.
I agree. And it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I mean, obviously, would this have all been solved if he had gotten a job? And that's going to be a part of this defense here. I think the Rooney Rule is something that the idea is right. The rule is wrong. I like the idea. I think it would have been better to say, hey, listen, you have to interview at least 10 candidates. You can't just hire the first candidate you talk to. To say that you have to at least interview one minority candidate seems a little ridiculous. Like, okay, we know who we want, but we got to talk to a minority candidate just because. And that's what the rule has become. I think initially the teams had the right idea with it. And then they took the letter of the law of it and says, okay, well, obviously I want to hire this guy. I like this guy, but to be able to handle the rule, I got to do this. And that's what Brian Flores is fighting. Like, hey, listen, this rule is ridiculous because all it's doing is making a farce of the fact that we are having this issue. And I disagree a little bit about what you're saying, where that no other company is run this way, because most large companies need to have a certain minority quota that they are required to have. And the NFL is not as a company, the NFL as a company probably does fit that quota. The teams are their own entities. So the teams themselves also have to fit that quota. And that's where some of this problem is that when you look at the NFL, you say, okay, the NFL consists of 32 teams. That's not the case. The NFL is a nonprofit entity, and all 32 teams are for profit.
Right.
So it's a whole different situation. And you can't look at it as, well, there's only one head coach that is a minority in the NFL. And everybody else, I mean, now there's two or, however many there are already at the moment, but that there's only this many, and it's the NFL's problem to have to deal with. Ultimately, it's not. And that's what's going to get proven in court here. This is going to be the hard part of this. And that's why I think that if it makes it to trial, it goes in front of Congress because there's no way of getting around it. There's absolutely no way.
I think you're right. But the only thing, once Congress starts getting involved in sports, then their tax exemption, them being able to be a business that has no competition really, that becomes troublesome, because then you've gone by that law, that little thing that the Congress has given sports. So let's talk a little bit about the Dallas Cowboys and the latest news. They've reached a settlement with four different cheerleaders for $2.4 million. The allegations is that a senior executive was filming them secretly in their locker room. And the Dallas Cowboys uh, made an agreement and paid them $2.4 million. I don't know if they're still cheerleaders or not. This happened in 2015. So I'm not sure. I didn't see it when I read it. And Pags, I think that this happens a lot in all sports. I think there's fraternization. I think there's a little bit of flirting. I think there might even that it even goes farther than flirting, as we found out with the Redskins. And you know, there's two ways to look at this. One, Dallas paid it, so they must be guilty. Or two, Dallas paid it because they don't want no problems. They don't want this in public opinion. They don't want to defend themselves in court. They just want to get this out of their way and keep going. What side do you think is the right side or of this situation, Back?
I think they got off cheap. If it made it to court, it'd be a lot more. They said the internal. I mean, obviously, who knows what's for real? But they said the internal investigation brought no proof of this. But between four girls, $2.5 million. You break that up four ways. That's just over $600,000. You give the lawyer his fee. You're probably walking away with maybe, $400,000 each. Because the lawyer's fees or however much he gets, is 30% or 20% or whatever it wounds up being. So I mean, they probably got taken care of well enough that says, okay, we're not going to talk about it anymore. I'm sure they have a binding agreement that says they are never allowed to talk about this ever again. That's part of the agreement there, that's how they got their money and such. The fact that there's only four of them makes me scratch my head, be like, okay, why was it only you four and not anybody else who was on the team? Because obviously there was, I think there was probably somewhere around 52. I think there's 12 on each corner, so I think there's like a total or 13 in each corner. So there's 52 in total cheerleaders. Why is this only 4 out of the 52? So, I mean, I got to imagine there's a lot of things. They don't want this to turn into the debacle that the Commanders have to deal with. So I think they got off cheaply.
Peg, this leads to the question of cheerleaders on teams, right? I mean, I've talked to other people that have played football talking about the cheerleaders, that there is always something going on. We talked before the show, the Giants are the only team without cheerleaders. The Steelers, I just found out, have tried out college squads to cheer for them. So the only team that definitely does not have any kind of cheerleaders is the New York Giants. Maybe this is part of the reason. Maybe they don't want that hassle. But the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, the original cheerleaders really in football, professional anyway, was a marketing thing for the Cowboys way back when Hank Schramm was there. And they were ambassadors around the world for the Dallas Cowboys. It was a heck of a promotional, a heck of a marketing scheme he had to go along with the late games. Here came the Cowboy cheerleaders. Everybody wanted to see them, dressed in their white shorts and their white boots and the tops they wear. Very pretty women, and everybody wanted them around the world, as you were talking about. I mean, even with the troops, right?
Right. I mean, like I said, they were an integral part of how Dallas got the moniker America's team. Yeah. They were part of the USO. Like they would go and they would travel overseas to go visit the troops. And, it was a symbol of America. You know what I mean? They would have the star and it was, so Hank Schramm, I guess at the time, is it Hank Schramm that owned the team then? Or
Tex Schramm.
Thank you. That, it was part of the marketing of the Dallas Cowboys. Right. And, it's like, you could say whatever you want. Like, obviously, I every time I say Dallas Cowboys, I have to say Dallas sucks. But yes. That being said, I mean, it was that type of stuff that ingrained in the troops and being out there, and then they would show that in on TV and on the movies and everything, that's what they were doing. And it is a part of football. It is a part of what it is exactly that they do. And the fact that it's now going to really become in question. How many other teams have done this? How many other times have things happened, have been reported and swept under the rug? It's the more that stuff that comes out, and the further we get along in the world today, where there's a little bit of cancer culture in everything. And maybe it's best that they don't deal with this anymore. There's a thought process that's kind of started to come down the line that says maybe these teams shouldn't have cheerleaders, because why deal with the headache? It's just a little bit of extra money. It's like, so the cheerleaders, as somebody mentioned over here, as I'm going on TikTok right now as well, somebody mentioned Washington doesn't have cheerleaders now. It's an entertainment dance team.
Right.
That they don't do cheerleaders on the sides. They come out, they do a dance, and then they go back into the locker room and wait till the next time they're out to do a dance. And that's done specifically because they can't really have cheerleaders right now. Nobody wants to be a cheerleader for the Washington, Commanders.
Yes.
Because that's of all the allegations that are surrounding them.
Yes, I mean, I just got an update that there are a few other teams, the Bears, the Browns, the Packers, that don't have professional cheerleaders. As I said, though, they have had college or high school cheerleaders at the games in certain times. But I know for sure the Giants just don't have them, and maybe that's a smart move, as you've been saying in their part, that the extra headache. But it sure does market the team. That's for sure.
I was going to say the Giants got more to worry about than cheerleaders.
Well, there's a lot of teams that's for sure. So Pags, on my show I go Thursday through Sunday, so I really haven't spoken about the Super Bowl on me and Jack's show. So I just wanted to make a couple comments on the game. First, it wasn't the greatest Super Bowl I ever seen. I don't want to hear it's one of the best of all time. It's not even close. I've been following the Super Bowl that I can remember as a kid since 1970. When the Minnesota Vikings played the Kansas City Chiefs. I could even name the players, but that would take too long. But anyway, it's definitely not the greatest. It was a good game. It was a competitive game. I don't want to hear the Rams the Bengals crying about the calls at the end of the game, then when they were calling them tighter. I mean, they got a gift on that opening drive, on that long touchdown pass when the wide receiver grabbed it. You could see it. I saw it. When I came home from work, I saw it. I said, that's a penalty. And they didn't call it. And they got a touchdown. So take away the Rams touchdown at the end of the game. Take away that touchdown. The Rams still win the game. The Bengals covered. I think it was a good game. I think it was a real good game. But it's not, one of the greatest Super Bowls I've ever seen for sure. I think the Bengals.
Yeah, that would still be Super Bowl 52.
Yes, that's one of them. So anyway, 25 wasn't bad either. But anyway, it leads you to believe that, what the Rams will do. We got Carter backstage right now, so we're going to bring him up. But something the Rams this year did that I think a lot of teams are going to copy, because you always copy somebody that does things and it works. And we're going to get into that later on in the show. But congratulations to the Rams and the Bengals for getting to the biggest game in the NFL season. So we have Carter B backstage with us. He's our NHL expert that we bring on every Thursday. He's just got a degree, Pags. He's smarter than both of us now. So let's bring Carter up. How you doing, Carter?
Hey, guys. How are you?
Not too bad, my
Carter,
friend.
how are you?
Not too bad at all. So Carter B comes on normally every Thursday. We break down the hockey. Pags is all into hockey too, so it was a great conversation when they're both on there with me. Me, not so much. I'm starting to get back into it slowly. The Hartford Whalers is still in my head, anyway. So Carter, let's do some of these standings real quick. I'll ask you questions, and then you and Pags can talk a little bit about hockey after we're done here about some of the news. So If you go to East, the Panthers are 33-10. Tampa Bay is 32-11. Toronto is 31-12. And Boston is at 27-16 right now in the East. Is Tampa Bay still a class of that division, or now do the Panthers have a shot, you think, this year, Carter?
No, I'd still have to think Tampa Bay is the class of the Atlantic. I mean, Florida might be having a really good year, but I mean, how can you go against the team that's just won 2 straight Stanley Cups? I mean, there's not much more you can say than that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm hoping that Tampa Bay loses this year because I just don't like Florida. You can quote me on that, Florida. I just don't like Florida because people go there and I can't go, and that's the main reason. But anyway, so let's get to the next division. You have the Metropolitan. Pittsburgh's in first, followed by the Hurricanes, the New York Rangers, and the Capitals. Pags just doesn't like Pittsburgh. I don't know why, but he just hates Pittsburgh with every fiber of his being. Is Pitt? You think these 3 top teams? Let me give it to you. Of these 4 teams, Carter, who wins that division? Pittsburgh, Hurricanes, the Rangers, or the Capitals? Who do you think's best to win that division this year?
I don't know. It's a bit of a tough question. I mean, I think Mike Sullivan's got the Penguins playing really good hockey right now, so I mean it's hard to bet against them, but I don't know. I mean, I really like Carolina in that division. I just think they're the most well-rounded team of any in the top 4. I mean, I just like I feel like the Canes have 4 forward lines that can contribute on offense. I mean, on D they're probably one of the best in the entire league, and they got 2 solid goalies in Frederick Anderson and Antti Ranta. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's just hard to to say. I mean. I don't think anything's changing in the Metro. I don't think anybody who's in right now is falling out, but I think it's pretty hard to bet against a team like Carolina taking that division home.
So that's
and you know what? I'm sorry. That goes with one of my questions for you, Carter. There is so big of a difference. Definitely not in the Western Conference because it's a lot more packed towards the bottom of that of those divisions and to get into the playoffs. But in the Eastern Conference, there's the haves and the have-nots, and the have-nots are not going to get in because it looks like I think that they're 18 points out. I mean, I think I think the closest one is 11 or 9 points out from getting into the playoffs. Why do you think that is? I mean, because obviously both of our teams are in there, Flyers and the Islanders are in that mix, and that we're just not going to be able to even start to sniff the playoffs at all. What do you think was the cause of that?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't think I have an answer for that. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's always been like that. I think over the last couple of years, it's always been the Eastern Conference has been the more dominant. I mean, think about some of the teams you have in the East now. You got Tampa, Carolina, Washington, Pittsburgh. I mean, the Rangers are coming up now. I mean, in the West, I feel like all you really got to worry about is Vegas and Colorado. Outside of that, it's a bunch of wild cards right now. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really don't have an answer for that. I think it's kind of just luck of the draw, I guess. I mean, a few years ago, it used to be the Western Conference was dominant and the East was just a bunch of wild cards, outside of 1 or 2 teams. But it seems like the cards have flipped a little bit.
Well, you mentioned the Central and the West or Pacific. The Avalanche is playing really good now. The Wild is I'm surprised the Wild's playing so well over there. The Blues, who fell off last year, I don't know if they're going to have enough to stay the course to stay in the top 4. We'll see. And then you got the Predators, Carter. Which team are you more surprised about, the Wild or the Blues still there right now, Carter?
I mean, I'm really not surprised that either team's there. I think both teams have proved, that they're legit Stanley Cup contenders. I mean, I think St. Louis had a bit of an off year last year, so I'm really not going to really not gonna hold them accountable for anything. But I guess if I had to pick one, I mean, maybe St. Louis a little bit. I mean, they did get swept in the playoffs last year by the Avalanche. They look like they could go a lot further this year. Obviously, I mean, even though a team looks like they could go far in the playoffs, all that matters is if they do or not, right? So I don't know. I mean, I guess pick St. Louis out of the two. I think Minnesota's really impressed me the last 2 years. The way that they've kind of come together as a team. I don't think a lot of people were expecting them to be where they are, but ever since they added Kaprizov, it seems like they've really blossomed into from a fringe playoff team to a contender pretty fast.
And then we'll finish off with the Pacific. The Flames are getting hot again. I think they've won 8 in a row or something like that. They were pretty hot in the beginning, and they've moved up to the front over the Knights, the Oilers, and the Kings. Are the Flames the team that could beat the Golden Knights to maybe be the conference representative there?
It definitely seems like it right now, at least in that Pacific Division. I mean, I remember saying this, at the start of the season. I think, it's going to be Vegas who wins that division unless there's any serious injury issues. And sure enough, they've been pretty banged up over the course of the year. So, I was expecting Edmonton to be up there. I don't think I mean, outside of McDavid and Draisaitl, their roster isn't great, but I think, um, I feel like their goaltending would have held up a little bit more, and that obviously hasn't been the case. And Calgary's just kind of hopped in there and taken that second seed so far, and so far they've ran with it. They look good.
Have you missed the men's team not being in the Olympics this year, Carter? Have you had any regrets that they didn't go? I mean, the U.S. Olympic team is normally pretty, they're competitive. They're up there normally in the medal rounds and stuff. And it seems to be a lot. I mean, I don't follow hockey the way I mean, Olympics, I should say, the way I used to. I don't think anybody really does. But you always, since the miracle on ice in 1980 and how hockey is, I think that brought hockey a little bit of popularity back then.
Hang on.
Go right ahead. So
Carter, time for him to wake up.
It is. He beat his alarm clock today, which is very interesting because he normally doesn't do that. So here's Carter coming back up.
Yeah, kidding me.
So Carter,
sorry about that. I left my alarm on this morning.
That's all right, Carter. At least you beat it up this time. So, anyways, do you miss not having the men's team in there? As I said, from the 1980, that's far back as I can remember. Really, getting interested in the hockey part of sports. Do you think it's a shame that they didn't go?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a shame whenever NHL players don't go to the Olympics. I think, I mean, I think this was our last shot to see guys like maybe like Patrick Kane, Alex Ovechkin play in the Olympics, right? So, there's rumors going around that maybe they'll play in 2026, but you'd have to think by then that it'll be taken over by guys like Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews. I feel like this is the last chance that we had to see maybe the past meet the present a little bit. So it definitely sucks, but I mean, given the COVID situation right now, I guess it is what it is. I can't really say anything about it.
The women's played the women Olympic team played for the gold, lost to Canada. I guess their center was hurt a couple of weeks ago. I think her name is Brima Decker, if I'm mistaken. But I mean, I didn't even know we had a great women's hockey league team that represented. So, I mean, any thoughts on that, Carter, on the women getting the silver there?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks they fell just short. I mean, I didn't get to watch a ton of the game last night, but I know they wound up falling down. I think it was 3-0, and they managed to get it back to 3-2, but it wasn't enough. So, I mean, it sucks that Decker went down early in the tournament. I mean, maybe she could have, provided an extra goal or two in that gold medal game against Canada last night. So, I don't know. I mean, it's unfortunate how it kind of plays out sometimes, but I have no doubt that they'll be right back up there. The next time they have one of these big international tournaments.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
know the Team USA that the women's team is usually always up in those top three teams. And her getting hurt. I mean, realistically, the biggest deal was that she was 20 minutes on the ice. So that 20 minutes has got to get broken up amongst a bunch of players. You can't just add a player once you're in the Olympics. You're stuck with the team that you have. So ultimately, that slack had to get picked up by other players. And when you're the best on the team, there's nobody that can fill those shoes, unfortunately. So, but the fact that they were able to rally around and still keep the silver medal and actually bring it back to 3-2 was just sort of more of a testament for the team and the coach and how they're sort of put together as a team in total.
well, let me ask both of you something, and I'm a stickler for this. I think it's the same way in basketball. It should be the same way in basketball anyway. I think the kids are the ones that should be playing, and I don't want to hear about there's pros in the other leagues. I don't care about that. I think we got some talented enough college, minor league players, and I maybe put minor league players in there that should be playing for the Olympics. I mean, to me, you get a hockey team, and then these guys go to different countries to their different teams anyway. So it's even though they play United States hockey, they end up going overseas anyway and playing for their home teams. And I think it lost a little magic, right? I mean, when the 1980 hockey team or when the basketball college team won goals, I mean, it was unbelievable. And I know, like I said, I know maybe it's unfair to the college kids, but you know something, they may never play professional sports, and this is something that was pretty special to them. Right, because I know not everybody from the American Ice team made the National Hockey League and became good pros, and I know the same thing with the college basketball players. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Do you think maybe they should go back to having the college, the young guys playing in the Olympics instead of the pros?
I don't know. I mean, I definitely think it's always fun to see NHLers go to a big tournament like that. I think there's there's very few chances that that you get to see guys like McDavid and Crosby and McKinnon go against guys like Matthews and Kane. On the biggest stage in the world. I mean, they had the World Cup of Hockey a few years ago, but that's really been it. I mean, they haven't gone to the Olympics since 2014. So, I don't know. I mean, it's still fun to watch either way. It's still international competition, but I think at the same time, you get NHL players there. I mean, it's kind of fun to see, the rosters that come out and see these kind of big name players go at it for Olympic gold. I mean, as great as it would be to see college players play there, I don't know. I just think it adds a little more of an entertainment factor to it.
It's part of nationalism, that they want to be the ones that get to hold their flag behind them, saying that we just won the gold. I mean, that's what you go to the competition for. That's what you go to do, and that's these teams become all-star teams. I wish they did the World Cup more frequently. They could do the World Cup like every 2 years or every 3 years, and it would sometimes coincide with the Olympics. But truth of the matter is that I wouldn't mind for the Olympics to take a step back. I mean, I've been watching the U.S. men's team play here, and obviously every team has got the same constraints right now. Because nobody was able to go back from the NHL to any team. So, they're all like, minor leaguers that are playing, and that's good for them. However, I do like watching the competition of, again, these all-star teams that come from the countries specifically to be able to play in an Olympic style setting, and to find out which country actually has the best hockey players. Because it's like usually Russia, Canada, Finland, the United States, Norway sometimes. These teams are the ones that are always in it. But, then you got teams like Germany that are always trying to compete, and even Italy's got a team. You know what I mean? That you never even think about that Italy has got a national team that goes and plays in the Olympics, and then you try to think, well, who ever plays hockey in Italy? It's too hot there. But that's what happens, and I kind of enjoy that type of setting. So there's a piece of me that says, yes, I agree that you should have these minor leaguers and college players play in the Olympics. But I also want other settings where the World Cup shows off the talent of all of the countries to play. And whether they have it as a pre-tournament before the season starts or like a post-tournament after the Stanley Cup, either way, I think that's something that they should really think about so that they get to show off that national spirit that each player has got.
Yeah, I mean, good points by both of you. Good points. I mean, I can understand. I just, I again, I'm old school from when there was 3 networks and you saw the Olympics and it was very popular. It's a lot more important to other countries than it is the United States. That's for sure, because we got so many popular sports here, where a lot of these countries really don't have the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball on the same standard we do. So they're really this is their their Super Bowl. And they really get behind their athletes over there, I think, a little bit more than we do. But
so,
anyway,
Mac, I want to hijack this conversation for just a minute because I want to talk to Carter for a second. So as we are definitely getting closer to the trade deadline, I believe it's March 10th or March 11th that everything ends. And obviously, in Philadelphia, G is the one that we're wondering if he's going to go besides the rest of the team, because right now I feel like nobody is. The only person that I would absolutely hold fast is Cam Atkinson. Everybody else could be considered trade bait for them. That being said, what do you think are some of the big names that could possibly be moved before the trade deadline, and what teams are going to be the most active to see if they can change their fortunes moving in towards the playoffs?
I don't know. I think I'll start with with the second question. I think you know I know it's going to be a bit of a vague answer, but I mean I feel like anybody who's kind of established themselves at the top of their division are going to be the ones who who wind up buying. I don't really see any of the wild card teams really going all in for the for a playoff push. Like I don't really see Boston adding a ton of names if they're just going to wind up being the second wild card in the East. So I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a wait and see type of approach. I mean, I could definitely see Colorado adding names. I think that could be a name that maybe Giroux goes to, or maybe that he wants to go to, depending on, depending on how their salary cap situation is looking. But I don't know. I mean, outside of Giroux, I really can't think of. I mean, maybe Mark Giordano in Seattle. I don't really think he's as high of a commodity as Giroux is, though, considering he's 38. So, um, I don't know. I really have to think about that. But I mean, yeah, those are the 2 names that kind of come to the top of my head right now. I'm sure there are definitely others that I'm just not thinking of. But
Yeah, there's been some rumors swirling around about Giroux. The interesting one was that St. Louis is a possibility for him because obviously their coach over there has got big Philadelphia ties. Calgary being another one. Johnny Hockey has always been tied with the Flyers in terms of being possibly coming here, and that they could use a big scoring kick that Johnny Hockey doesn't always give them. So that to have a good center there, I thought that maybe it would behoove Boston to try to go for another center. And I don't know that Philadelphia is interested in trading with Boston and what they would be able to give up in return. For your Islanders, do you see any name that would possibly get traded, or have you heard anything that's possibly coming across the line that they're going to be sellers?
yeah, I've heard a few things. I mean, I think I don't really think they have a ton of assets that teams are necessarily let's say lining themselves up to get, but I definitely think there are assets out there that the Islanders could sell and get a little bit from. I think, one of them being Cal Clutterbuck. I mean, he's a fourth line forward that not a ton of people know about, but very very physical. I mean, he obviously plays a big part on that Islanders fourth line, and it's a big part of their penalty kill too. So I think whatever team gets him, they're really looking to bolster their PK and their just overall physicality. So um, I could definitely see people going after him. I mean,
How about
outside
the
of that though,
goalie?
I really can't think of anybody too big. I mean, unless they decide
Nobody,
to.
nobody interested in maybe your goalie. That there could be. I mean, obviously he's been to 2 Eastern Conference, finals. That he's had some of that wear. That he knows what it takes to do it in the playoffs and so like that. You don't see him being a commodity.
Um, I don't know. I think it's really kind of a wait and see type of thing. I mean, he does have one more year left on his current contract at 5 million. So, I mean, if teams are interested in a guy like Varlamov, I think people are definitely going to come knocking with the way that he's played over the last couple of seasons. I could definitely see Edmonton being a team linked to him. I think they need a goalie and they need one bad. So. Varlamov to Edmonton is definitely something that I could see, but um, I don't know if they're necessarily crazy to move him. I mean, a lot of people on Long Island really like him, so I mean, obviously he's been a huge part of the Islanders' success over the last 2-3 years. So um, I don't know. I mean, I think Clutterbuck's the only one who's most likely on his way out the door, but I guess when you're selling at the deadline, I don't think anybody's really off limits in terms of, whether or not you can get assets back.
Good points, and good questions. Carter, we're going to let you go. We'll hopefully get you back here next Thursday. Congratulations on your degree, and keep doing what you're doing, Carter. It's excellent stuff there, folks. Carter B, our NHL expert, on with us every Thursday. Have a great day, Carter.
All right, guys, take care.
Good seeing you, Carter.
So there you go, folks. Carter B on with me and Pags, which is different than me and Jack, because even though Jack is kind of knowledgeable about hockey, Pags is into it a lot more than we are, so he can really get into some of the meat of the questions that we may overlook. So, folks, we're going to take our first break of the day. We'll be back on the other side. So we'll be talking about NBA, and we'll be getting to the NFL as we go along. So stick with us. As I said, we'll be right back after these messages. As long as my board responds to what I'm doing here, I'm hoping it does. Pags, you know what I'm talking about, right? If people out there don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to boards, I mean, there's sometimes they're just out of control. We'll be right back after these messages, folks.
You worked too hard, you ate too much, the cheesecake made you greedy. Let your aching head and stomach hear this message from old Speedy. Alka-Seltzer, plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. Those Speedy bubbles relieve your upset stomach and headache fast. For acid indigestion alone, Alka-Seltzer Gold. Oh, what a relief it is. What a relief.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting the stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
Banana, and I'm here to say I am the top banana in the world today. Now you know the best bananas in the land, so don't slip up. with an inferior brand. When it says chiquita, it's a very good day to buy bananas.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
When the job is done, this guy'll be ready to dig into something mighty good to eat.
How do you handle a hungry man? The manhandlers.
One of the manhandlers is Campbell's vegetable beef. Gets a man-sized supper off to a good hot start. Good.
The manhandlers. If you're talking, they will hear you. Every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I've made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. As we're on live Thursday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. My special guest host for today, the Philly sports guy himself, Jamie Pags, joins me as Jack is taking another day off. As he's really abusing his contract that I have with him, Pags. I mean, he's taking days off left and right. So, but anyway, I'm glad to have Pags in with me as we cover the sports and get you updated on our first show of the week. Pags, NBA is really interesting, and it's the thing about the NBA I love. And there's not a lot of things I love about the NBA, but one of them is that you switch from offense to defense. You've got to be able to do both very well to be an NBA player. Some are better than others, but you at least got to hold your own, right? I mean, in a drop of a hat, you switch from offense to defense. There's no position that is just a defender. Like in soccer and hockey, it's the same, but they have defender positions, halfbacks and fullbacks or defenders. You don't have that in the NBA, and that's the beauty of that sport. So we're going to get the NBA standings, some scores, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some NBA news. First, let me give you the East. The Bulls are in first, followed by the Heat, the Bucks, Cleveland Cavaliers, the 76ers, and the Celtics. In the West, you have the Suns, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Jazz, the Dallas Mavericks, and Denver still holding in that sixth slot. In the games, the Hawks beat Magic 130-101. The Nets and Knicks another loss, 111-106. In Indiana beat the Jazz 113-108. Pistons cool off them red hot Celtics 112-111. The Spurs beat the Thunder 114-106. The Raptors 103, Timberwolves 91. The Bulls beat the Kings 125-118. Portland beats the Grizzlies 123-119. Phoenix over the Heat, 124-121. The Lakers do get a win, even though Davis gets hurt, 116-101. And Denver beats the Warriors 117-116. Anthony Davis, I just mentioned, gets carried off the floor. He's injured again. I think this is the second or third year in a row he's injured. I mean, what do you think about that signing now? I mean, Davis, when he's healthy, is one of the best in the league, probably top 5, 6 players in the league, but he's always getting hurt now, Pat.
Yeah, and I was listening to Stephen A the other day, and he was saying that once this season is over, that it may be worthwhile to see what you can get for him, as he's 28 years old, still got a lot left in the tank. He is one of the most dominant guys out there when he's on the court. However, he's, the problem is for the last couple of years that he's had a hard time staying on the court. Now, I think that happens. That's cyclical. I mean, obviously, sometimes you're doing great. Sometimes you're not doing great, and you can't help injuries. That being said, I feel that it may be in the best interest. I mean, it's interesting because obviously right now, if the season ended today, the play-in game would be the Clippers versus the Lakers.
Yeah.
To get in, and that's kind of interesting to me. It's like, oh, wow, it's how's that going to come out to play? That who gets home court advantage in that, really, in the grand
yeah.
thing.
I mean, Pags, if you look at it, right? I mean, you can't help injuries. I agree with that. But there are some players that are injury prone. Zion Williams is another one, right? I mean, he was supposed to come in and tear up the league, but he's hardly on the court. When he's on the court, he's great. But I mean, what can you do about something like that? Where I remember way back when injuries weren't as big a part of the game as they are now, and they didn't rest their players like they do now. I mean, you had Parrish and Bird and McHale, the Lakers and the Pistons. They were not this much, and they didn't rest their players like they do today. What do you think is the problem with that?
The way that the athlete has evolved over time, these guys have gotten bigger, stronger. They have done more difference with science. And I feel that although the science is much better on what it takes, I feel that the way that, they're doing above human stuff anymore, that there's just so much that goes into the training and just to be able to get everything on the court that you're pushing the bodies to the absolute max. Where I feel like back in the day, I mean, you never heard about load management. That was a new term kind of brought out by Embiid, really, or really San Antonio was the first one to start to do that when they were, resting their guys during the regular season, because they knew that once it got to the playoffs, you wanted to have a lot more in the tank than why waste Duncan's, on a meaningless regular season game. You could just sit him for a game and he's going to be a lot more fresh the next time around. So I feel that there's been a lot of that because just everything is a lot different now. Like I said, these guys are bigger, they're faster, they're stronger. And because of that, when you stretch, when you bend the rules of nature, sometimes those rules break, and that's where injuries occur.
I agree with that 100%. I think they train way too much in all professional sports today. You see a lot of non-contact injuries that you never saw before, and they might be a little bit bigger and stronger and faster, but they're a lot more apt to get injured than they ever were. Than a lot of players I know from way back when, and
the injuries become more gruesome in the process. I mean, we've never heard about. I mean, think about some of the quarterbacks that have these horrific leg injuries that are non-contact, but they're so strong they literally pull their bodies out of their legs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just like, or their legs out of their body, and those are the types of things that the body doesn't typically do that. You almost have to train it and have certain strength level in the rest of your body where that one weak spot gives. And that's what I think you're seeing. That's what's happening. That they're finding the weak spot. That nature finds the weak spot, and it says, okay, everything else is strong around me except this one spot right here. Break. and that's where these injuries occur.
It makes sense. What do you think? What do you think about the Bulls? I mean, they're a good young team. I don't know if they're a championship level team, but there's, they're out there. They're competing. You see the Grizzlies and the Raptors making some noise right now. I mean, good young teams. I don't know if they're ready or not. And what bothers me, and I got a debate show coming up Saturday that I'm going to talk about this a little bit, is the free agency. Because you really can't be loyal to a team like you used to be, right? The main players, the main core would stay with a team for a long time. And we're going to get to the big trade here in a minute because you'll have a lot of knowledge about that. But it seems to me that it's so hard to root for a team, for me to root for a team now, than it used to be. I was a Knick fan. You had Ewing there and Oakley for a while, and a couple of the other players that played for a while. Boston, of course, as I said, had their core. The Lakers had their core. Chicago had their core, and you're rooted for the teams. But now it's so hard because they're on the move. Every couple of years, somebody's on the move. LeBron with Cleveland goes to Miami, back to Cleveland. Now he's in LA. And there's more LeBron fans than there are, I think, Cleveland Cavalier fans now. And to me, that's kind of a shame. And I don't know. I'm going to bring this up during the debate show. I think maybe sports should start setting a limit on free agency. In other words, don't take it away from the players that you can go somewhere and make money like Brady did and like Peyton Manning did at the end of their careers. But if you're going to let players move around every few years and they're unhappy, so they want to go somewhere else, doesn't the sports lose something there? Doesn't the teams lose something?
Yes, I believe that. Like that's part of the problem with merchandising. I mean, you buy a jersey and the next year the guy's gone. And it's like, I mean, I guess that's good in some ways because then they have to buy another jersey if they're following that one player. And I think that fantasy football and fantasy sports and Madden, interestingly enough, has a lot to do with this. That the mindset of the younger GMs and the coaches and such like that is, let's go and I bet you if I had this team together, this team would be a championship team. So let's try that. Let's get rid of these guys and get this guy in. And you're tinkering so much that it becomes less about the team and more about what it is. It becomes more personal is how I feel. I feel like that this becomes, this is my team. This is how I set it up. This is how, egotistical, you almost become narcissistic about this, where it's like, okay, I set this team up and I put this team together and this is what it's become. And obviously in Philadelphia, we dealt with somebody who was like, okay, we're going to go through a whole process, announced the process and said, hey, we know that we need a big three to win in this league. We ain't got any of those pieces right now. So we're going to start collecting assets till we have those pieces. And then, of course, the NBA stepped in and says, you can't just continue to do this. You can't do this anymore. We're not going to let you. And then we're going to make you fire your GM. We're going to give you another GM, and what a crock that was. I mean, the NBA kind of stepped in and said, all right, we're going to just give you this guy because we know he's a basketball guy. And the truth of the matter is that he's too busy playing on Twitter, you making fake accounts and all that other fun stuff. And next thing you know, he's fired. And, now we've, had Elton Brand and now we've got Daryl Morey here. So, I mean, obviously it's evolved, from that when you get like somebody telling you, you have to do this. I thought that was, these teams are supposed to do whatever they can. And
yeah,
I understand we've been dealing with the process. The process got us, these number one picks. Obviously, some of them didn't pan out very well. Markelle Fultz, and, Ben Simmons. However, it's that thought process that got us to this point, that got us a team now that realistically, when it's all together and we get to see them play and see how cohesive they are, could contend for a championship.
So,
We'll
Pags, Austin kind of agrees with what we're saying, but it doesn't just fall on players now, right? The coaches that get hired, they want winners right away. No longer you got 5 years to bring a team together, right? You got 1, 2, sometimes 1 year. I mean, if the thing is, if they see something else out there they think can work better than what you're doing, never mind building a culture, never mind building a system, never mind drafting the players you want to make the system happen. It's like your legs get cut out from underneath you. Sometimes with just cause, sometimes with no just cause at all. I mean, even proven coaches that go to the playoffs are being fired because they're not going down the path that the team, for some reason, this GM doesn't think they should be going down. And again, I think the sports are more volatile today than they've ever been for players, and coaches are now starting to take advantage of that too, down all the way into the college levels where, hey, I don't want to be here anymore because I can't get the recruits I want, such as in Kelly's case. And I think it takes away from the sport and the teams. And like I said, I got nothing against anybody going out and making as much money as they can. That's great. I'm all for them doing that. But when it hurts the sport, and it hurts the loyalty of fans to these teams and to, for instance, your 76ers there. And like I said, we're going to get to that. Embiid is part of what could be a core there. He could be there for another few years. You guys could have a great, if you get the pieces around him, a great run here. Like the Bucks have a shot at doing a great run. They got a nice core there to keep it together. They did it mainly through the draft. They did pick up a couple pieces through free agency, but the Bucks have a core. They have a chance of repeating. They have a chance of going back again next year if they keep everybody together. But the 76ers now, I mean, they look like they had a core. They look like that maybe they could be a contender. But then you have one player, because he has a bad playoff series, decides that he can't play there no more, that he has mental issues, that, of course, they disappear when he goes to another team. He's ready to play basketball again. And you get another player in his place that has moved twice within, 3 years now. You got the 3-time leading scorer, James Harden, who couldn't get it done with Houston. They competed, though. They were there. He goes to the Nets, and this is a big formula that they have that didn't work. And now he's on the 76ers as one of the leading scorers of all time in the NBA, and this year, one of the leading assist leaders. In fact, he does lead the league in assists at 10.1 assists a game. So you got one guy who, whether you like him or not, is a great defender, who can go to the hoop, who can dish the ball out in Simmons when he wants to play, going to a Nets team that desperately needed something like that. And then you got a more happy player coming to the 76ers that can score and they can dish the ball. So, first of all, your thoughts on Simmons going to the Nets. Is he gonna have problems this year and maybe a couple more years in the future just because of what he pulled this year? Or do you think he just pushes on and starts doing it for the Nets?
Hard to say. I would say that, a tiger doesn't change its stripes, or a zebra doesn't change its stripes. And realistically, that I feel that ultimately there's going to be a certain level of criticism that it's great right now. He's in a honeymoon phase with his new team. He's going to be able to show what he can do a little bit. The whole mental illness part was that whole press conference was ridiculous as far as I was concerned. You know what I mean? I just felt like, okay, you're going to obviously you can't go there and say, listen, I don't want to play there anymore. And that was my mental illness. And now that's gone. Now that I'm here, it's gone. Obviously, that's what it was. And I feel that the NBA, because it's actually, I found out that the CBA is not up for another 2 years. So realistically, this has got to be a thumbtack is going to be put in this for the CBA in a couple of years from now. So that, like I said, I believe they're going to make the Ben Simmons rule, where if you're going to run into this type of problem, that they're going to be able to say you're not going to be able to get paid. You got to do things with the team in comparison to doing them on your own. It's no longer going to be, like I said, the players are going to lose a little bit of ground in this. However, I think that once it comes down to the pressure again, that the pressure doesn't change. That's the problem. Like, he didn't want to play in the tournament with LSU because the pressure was going to get to him. The playoffs, he's come up very, very small. I feel that even though he's got some players around him, that the big time that this is going to occur is when they are at home in Brooklyn and you don't have Kyrie and he's got to be the second best player on the team. Is he going to be able to do that? Or is the fear of I don't want to drive because I don't want to get fouled, because I don't want to go to the foul line, because it's already in my head that I can't make a foul shot when it comes down to it. Those are the things that, is that a mental illness? Maybe. You know what I mean? That I can't get over the fear of being put in the spotlight and getting critiqued.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's going to show through.
And the commissioner of basketball has come out and said that the New York, the COVID protocol doesn't make any sense. And it's kind of crazy, the timing, right? Because Irvin can't play in Brooklyn, in New York, because of their COVID rules, but can play in the cities that don't have these rules. And now with Simmons going there and the Nets, looking up right now. I mean, I know they won the last few games, but they're still looking up at the leaders. Isn't it weird timing that the commissioner comes out now and starts saying the New York rules are don't make any sense?
Well, I think it's because of everything else that's happening around. Obviously, the commissioner is speaking about, the mandates in Philadelphia that you don't need the vaccination card anymore to go into places. California is kind of lifting some of those right now. I mean, as of a week ago, if the Nets made it to the finals against Golden State, Kyrie was not going to be able to play,
right,
at all. You know what I mean? Because of these standards. Now these standards are starting to get a little bit more lax. They're starting to try to, ease up these restrictions that have been on us now for a couple of years. And ultimately, that's where he's like, hey, we've got a star over here that we can't play in the biggest city in the country. And maybe it's you, it's not him anymore. You know what I mean? It's obviously there's enough people that feel the exact same way he does. So maybe it's you and not him.
So I find it that he should have came out a lot sooner than that with his comments, because I think it has a little bit to do with the Nets and their personal situation there. I sure don't hurt that he's saying something now, because the Nets are still favored to win the NBA championship, and I don't know who the heck's favored them with the team they have right now and under the problems they're having there. So let's talk a little bit about
some of that's. I'm not to cut you off. I think that some of that's still political. Like there's an air of politics that are still involved with that, and that's why he kept his mouth shut all this time.
I agree. So Austin Torque wants to know, how do you feel about getting Harden? And before you go, Pags, I mean, Harden is a little bit older than Simmons, a lot, but he is a great shooter, and he is a great assist guy, which should help Embiid. He doesn't have to carry the load of the team unless he wants to. And you team him up with a few other players you got. I mean, I think you're a legitimate contender. I don't know if you'll win the East or not, but I think you can have a say when all's said and done.
I obviously am a lot more excited about this team right now in comparison to where I was before. I felt that, really it was losing Drummond. I thought Drummond was a great pick up this year for the Sixers. It was great when Embiid was on a rest, and doing those things. And there's going to be a little bit more put on Embiid throughout the rest of the season now. Like those breaks are going to be, when he took a day off, Drummond would, he may not score a lot of points, but he had 20 rebounds. So it was like he would sniff 10 rebounds just from being on the court for 15 minutes. And that's not something that you could just replace very easily. They don't have that other piece in place. Obviously, Ben Simmons was not going to come back to Philadelphia and play for any reason whatsoever. So that headache is now gone. And then you have, okay, so you have a guy who shot 40% from 3-point, who was going through a little bit of a slump at the time. Obviously he had like an 8-game streak where he was just playing horrific. And he goes through those streaks sometimes to get Harden. You know what I mean? And the picks, I'm not worried about the picks because they're crapshoots at, in the 20s anyways. And who knows what's going to happen in, 2027, when that pick comes to fruition. So my thought is that it was a good trade for both teams. Obviously the Nets did get rid of what they thought was starting to become a cancer. And they brought on somebody who they think can help them, propel them to get past the Bucks, because that's really who they're going up against. That's who they're, in their mind, they have to beat the Bucks. The Sixers, they feel like they're already past that point. So the Sixers needed that extra spot because I feel like when you rely on some of the players that they had on the court, that they were an okay team, but they weren't a good, possibly great team. And that's the difference. You got to be a possibly great team to get over these humps, to get to the conference finals and the finals. And I feel that, like I said, it was a win for both teams. I know as a Sixers fan, I'm a lot more excited. I mean, especially, and then of course they have the stinker that they played on Tuesday, where I feel like on Monday night, Harden took the team out, and that really started to had a lingering effect for Tuesday, where really they shot like under 30% from the field. But I've never seen any team at all shoot 60% from the field, over 50% from 3-point. So Boston really did play a tremendous game. You may never see a game like that ever in our lifetime on how well they shot from the field. It was just amazing how they just seemed like every ball was going in. And so ultimately, I mean, obviously Boston played their greatest game and the Sixers didn't play at all. And you had a 50-point loss or a 48-point loss.
Yeah.
So
listen, I take nothing away from the Celtics. I think they always could have had a great team. They just don't have anybody to put it together for them. I don't know why. Austin says 76ers are contenders. My Warriors are in a slump. Listen, don't worry about your Warriors, man. No, if they don't win that, I would be surprised if they don't go to championship and win it this year. He also says, Pags, that, should be a really good, exciting game to watch, the 76ers and Bucks. I think he's right. I think it'll be a great game. The Bucks, I still think, will go back, but we'll see what happens, as it plays out. You never know. You never know for sure. But
I'm interested to see the 7-game series now. Like that's, it was robbed from us last year because we couldn't get past Atlanta. Right. And Atlanta brought us to the game 7, and that's what started this whole Ben Simmons situation in the first place.
Yep.
And Atlanta, Atlanta just wanted it more. They had a lot of heart, and you could tell that was the difference of the series. The heart that Atlanta showed in comparison to the heart that Ben Simmons showed. Because he was such an integral part. And
I agree. Listen, I don't deny that. I don't deny that, Pags. I mean, I know a lot of players that have problems with their outside shot or foul shooting. They don't stop playing. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal was not the most beautiful foul shooter in the world, and I'm not comparing Ben Simmons to Shaquille O'Neal in no way.
But we can put him. We can put him Giannis. And I know I kill his name. Giannis. Giannis is how you say it. Giannis is a terrible foul shooter. But you know what? He wants to get back to the foul line. Every time he can, he wants to get back to the foul line. Who cares if he shoots 50% from the foul?
You don't give up. He don't give up. He makes plays. Defensively, offensively, he's always making plays. So, folks, we're going to take our second commercial break for the show. We'll be back on the other side. Maybe we'll finish up with some basketball. We're definitely going to get to some football. A lot of stuff going up, and a little bit maybe on baseball. I don't know. There's really nothing going on in baseball, but we might say a couple things about it.
I have a little bit of news on baseball.
Well, there you go. Cool. See, I mean, that's great, Pags. You even surprised me. That's beautiful. I don't get surprised easily. Folks, we'll be right back after these messages.
McDonald's is our kind of place. It's such a happy place. Happy place. A clean and snappy place. McDonald's is our kind of place. It's such a happy place. McDonald's is our kind of place. Your kind of place.
McDonald's believes in getting food to your kids before they get to each other. Such good food, too. McDonald's famous French fries, triple thick creamy shakes, lean beefy cheeseburgers and hamburgers, icy cold soft drinks. And here's a plus, spill-proof lids on all beverages. Another plus, napkins that are big as a bib. Quality, cleanliness, extra care service. That's McDonald's. A total value that's unmatched anywhere.
McDonald's is our kind of place. It's such a happy place. McDonald's is our kind of place.
Your kind of place. We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, Ann, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just...
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
I heard you want to be a frito bandito like me. You do? Then you must sing the bandito song. Let's sing together. You just follow the bouncing Fritos corn chips bag. Ay, 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 ay. I am the frito bandito. Hey, I like Fritos corn chips. I love them, I do. I want Fritos corn chips. I'll get them from you. Ay, 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 ay. Oh, I am the frito bandito. Give me Fritos corn chips and I'll be your friend. The frito bandito, you must not offend. Now, boys and girls, you are frito banditos too. You sing the frito bandito song and you loco for crunchy Fritos corn chips. That's nice. Munch, munch, munchy, munchy Fritos corn chips.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, the Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this.
Already. I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, guys, any...
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. I'm your host, Mac, with your special co-host today, the Philly sports guy himself, Jamie Pags, who joined me today for our Thursday show. Always a pleasure to have him on. And let me do a couple quick promos here. We are live on the Roku TV channel, where we have our show and we have a bunch of other shows on today. We also got videos on demand. Check that out. So download that app, if you will, and channel search Northeast Streaming Sports. We're on YouTube live also. We'd appreciate you if you go there and you subscribe there. And we'll be on a bunch of other platforms later on as we share our show everywhere. And a lot of great shows on Northeast Streaming Sports. You got Pags that does his thing with the NFC East show, and maybe do some other shows for us. And we have Larry Frank, Keith Angle, Robert Butler, just to name a few, Captain Jack and Sneaky G and Sal Angiolita talking baseball. I mean, there's a lot of variety, wrestling, boxing, baseball, all kinds of stuff we have on the network. So go over to Roku, as I said. Please download that app and keep us growing as we continue to become bigger and bigger every week. So Pags, one other thing I want to mention to you folks. We have a huge fundraiser June 27th that the Philly Sports Guy will be at, along with some great sports personalities, including Jim Jeffco, two-time Super Bowl champion. Master ceremonies will be Joe D'Ambrosia, one of the most famous sports broadcasters in Connecticut, winner of multi-awards, covered everything from NFL to basketball to everything. So get down there to Granby, Connecticut, where all these stars will be at. We're supporting the Connecticut semi-pro football teams, raising funds for their nonprofit. The semi-pro football leagues are on Northeast Streaming Sports when they're up and playing live. They'll be coming into our Roku channel, so you have some live football. And we're working on baseball too, Pags. We may have an independent team and maybe a league Sal's working on for us. So maybe we'll have that live on the network too. It'd be very great if we did. So you'll not only have the shows and VODs, but live action, folks. So that's pretty much it for the update. So Pags, a little bit more on basketball. Who do you like in the West? I mean, the Lakers have just fallen off the map. The Clippers are really having problems. But you got the Warriors. You got the Suns that are going at it for first and second. A lot of people thought the Suns might fold up after last year losing the championship. But they haven't. They've come back with more vigor than they did last year. So they're really hanging in there. So who do you like over there? Do you like the Warriors? You like the Suns? You like someone else?
So obviously the Warriors are the big name that the Suns made it last year, and obviously they are the best team in the league currently. That's to only lose 10 games. They're 48-10 right now. So obviously they're taking care of business. The Warriors, I guess, like I said, they're going through a little bit of a slump, but this is what happens right around the All-Star break. Teams seem to take it off a little bit, and then they turn on that switch after the All-Star break because they know that's the final push, and they want to start to have the upswing become so that when you get to the playoffs, you're kicking on all cylinders here. I think the one surprise team, and I saw them play the other day, is the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah.
And of course, they're a young team, so it's going to be a lot of a learning curve right away. And obviously you can't have three teams that are going to make it to the conference finals. But I feel like that they are going to have the best chance of unseating the Suns. Wow. I feel that if they get to draw the Suns in the playoffs in a 7-game series, that team is going to be able to really give them the best opportunity to unseat them and possibly get into the finals against the Warriors. If they're going up against the Warriors, I think the Warriors are just too talented and have been there too often to give that up. But again, you never know. You know what I mean? Obviously, that's why you play the game and you don't just write it down on a piece of paper. So, but I feel like that would be the big surprise. As I look down further down the list, I just don't see anybody that's going to really make that much of a difference or a run. I mean, obviously, Denver stepped back a little bit in comparison to where they were last year, and Utah, same type of situation. Like you said, we already said the LA teams would be playing against each other in a play-in game, so I don't really see any difference other than like the top three. Denver could make a push. Obviously, like I said, that these teams are going to turn it on after the All-Star break. It just becomes a matter of, are they going to be able to turn it on and make so much of a splash that they would be able to then, make a play to get into that conference final and then possibly the finals.
Austin Turk pretty much agreed on what we say. By the way, Austin, I love your helmet on the side there. It's a great helmet. Don't ever lose that helmet. Pags, you mentioned the All-Star game. And to me, like the NFL Pro Bowl and Major League Baseball starting to a point, it's garbage now. It's a pickup game. They pick LeBron James and Durant picked their teams. They snubbed Harden this time because he left. I mean, LeBron James on purpose didn't take Harden so that Durant would have to, and he didn't. And to me, this again makes the point I'm making about sports, how they're changing, not wanting to get hurt, not wanting to really play the game the way it was meant to be played. And my feelings are now in all these games and all this stuff, just vote for them, give them the All-Star or All-Pro title, and let's push on. Don't waste my time with 180 game to 170 game. I don't want to see that. That's not basketball anymore.
Well, and that was the first thing I said. Obviously, you want to bet the over in the All-Star game. That's what's going to happen because they're going to put the over at about 300, and it's going to go over. You know what I mean? So, but realistically, again, as I said with football, and as it's kind of the same thing with basketball. I feel that they should take a page from hockey. They should break these teams down and break them into teams of 5 where you're playing 3-on-3 and have tournaments. Like you get 30 players that are all-stars and you break them up into 6 5-man teams. You have mini, these games, all-star weekend. It's an all-star weekend. They have these 3-point shots and they have these dunk contests and stuff like that. You could make it 2 days worth of basketball where you're playing very small amounts of basketball and just, 3-on-3 and do those in a tournament style where the winning team gets to split $1 million. Well, now it's $200,000 a person if there's a 5-man team, and then you get 6 coaches and stuff like that. So obviously they're going to have to get in the mix there too. But literally, you make it something like that, all of a sudden these players are going to start playing.
Yeah,
because $200,000 ain't nothing to sniff at. It's like to be able to make that type of money, or even $150,000 because you got to include the coach and assistant coach and whatever. But realistically, that's what I think would be a lot more exciting. And instead of having the dunk contest, instead of having the 3-point contest, or still have them, you know what I mean? That could be the fodder in between these games and such like that, where you make it a 2-day event, and the winner gets to split that $1 million. It makes it worthwhile and makes it a lot more interesting. I feel like the same thing with the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl should be, I said it, and I even wrote a letter to the NFL regarding this. I said that the NFL could do 2 things with the Pro Bowl. They could make a league-wide competition for the fans where you get to choose 4 fans from across the league, and they get to coach these Pro Bowl teams, and you split them up into 4 teams and you play just touch football, which is what these games are anyways. Right, you know what I mean? And just literally play touch football, 7-on-7 touch. And again, same situation, make the grand prize $1 million or $2 million because there's a lot more players when you're having it doing like that, and make it fun again. Watching these guys put on all these pads to just go, you know what I mean? Literally, they stop and they blow in the whistle and that's it. If you're going to do that, take the pads off. Let's do these things. You know what I mean? Let's just do it this way. And then you include the fan base by having 4 people be honorary coaches where they get to make plays in the dirt. You know what I mean? Get back to the roots of football. I feel like the same thing. Get back to the roots of basketball. If you did it something like that, you could have honorary coaches. You could include the fan base. You could get you can get people involved that aren't involved. Like, okay, hey, somebody from Portland wound up coaching an Eastern Conference All-Star team. That's kind of exciting. You know what I mean? Like that just adds a little bit of flair and excitement for the fans as well as doing something different for the players. Because I think, like I said, I agree, it's a farce.
It might even be more competitive. if you did do something like that. It's not a bad idea at all, Pags. So let's get to some of the NFL news out there. We already talked about the big news items that were in the headlines with the cheerleaders and the lawsuit and all that. Let's take a look at that quarterback carousel for a minute. And if you look at it, Rodgers will probably be out of Green Bay. I have no doubt in my mind that he's leaving Green Bay. For where I'm not sure. There's a few teams that he could end up with. Denver is probably the biggest contender for him. Russell Wilson was very unhappy, and I think Seattle is trying to keep him in a certain way where they're going to keep the head coach on, Pete Carroll. But he fired his whole offensive coaching staff and his whole defensive coaching staff. All the coordinators are gone. So I think this is the last year for Pete Carroll. Does Russell Wilson want to stick around for that last year? What his relationship with Carroll is what will determine whether Russell Wilson decides to get out of Seattle or not. Now, I don't know if he'll want to be part of a rebuild and this being Carroll's last year. Of course, we got Watson, who would be in that first tier if he gets everything cleared up, which I don't think will happen for years. But whatever, say it does. Say everything is above board. Rodgers, Wilson, and Watson are available. What do you think goes first, and where do you think they go, Pags?
Initially, first off, I don't know that. With Russell Wilson, it's the relationship between him and Carroll that's strained. I feel like that the deciding factor in Seattle is DK Metcalf, of all things. I think that DK Metcalf has become a little bit of chirpy. You know what I mean? That he's become the diva. And ultimately, where Russell is maybe starting the downside of his career, and DK is, saying, hey, I need somebody who can get me the ball, getting a little bit of Terrell Owens in him. And I feel like that's where the strife is really coming from in Seattle. So they said, okay, let's try to change everything up. I think Pete Carroll's trying to make a last-ditch effort to see if he could save his job some. Ultimately, I mean, he did win a Super Bowl, did get back-to-back Super Bowls. Obviously, they lost that second one because of a call that he made. Obviously, they should have just ran the ball, and they probably would have won back-to-back Super Bowls, but they didn't. And because of that, and they haven't been back since then. So I'm not sure if Russell Wilson will stay or not. Like I said, it's going to depend on DK Metcalf, of all people. I have spoken to somebody just recently about what's happening in Indianapolis. There's rumors that are coming around, and that they're going to drop him and all this other stuff. And I'm like, you just spent all that capital, and now you're going to just drop him. And it's like, I know that Green Bay, got a first-round quarterback, but that quarterback has not been anything near what Rodgers is. When they got Rodgers was, on the bench for a couple of years and then chomping at the bit. This guy might be chomping at the bit, but he's not anywhere near what Rodgers was when Brett Favre was the guy holding the reins. So there's a possibility, and maybe you hear this first as this hot take, that Rodgers winds up getting traded to Indianapolis and they switch quarterbacks.
Really?
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see something like that, or even possibly a carousel type of trade with Tennessee, where Rodgers goes to Tennessee, Tannehill goes to Indianapolis, and Carson Wentz goes up to Green Bay. And the reason why I think Carson Wentz to Green Bay makes a lot more sense is that North Dakota State is, when I went to Minnesota, there was a ton of people that came from North Dakota. And North Dakota is really split on the Packers and the Vikings.
Right.
And they were a big fan of Wentz, so there was a lot of people that were on the Wentz wagon. I think that if you send him up to Green Bay, you're going to start to take those people that may be Vikings fans but are Wentz fans and get them over to Green Bay side as well. And I feel that he's going to have a tremendous amount more support, excuse me, in Green Bay than he would anywhere else.
Okay. All right. Listen, that was the second tier I was going to ask you. You got Garoppolo. There's talk about Cousins, maybe Minnesota wanting to move away from Cousins, Wentz, and Tannehill. Tannehill again. A lot of people are now in Tennessee blaming him for their losing in the playoffs. I guess he gets some of the blame, being the quarterback, throwing them picks. Maybe not all his fault, but it doesn't matter. He's been there for a while. They've been close, but haven't been able to get over the hump. Garoppolo's been to a Super Bowl. When the team is playing well, he plays well. When they're not, when there's anything has to fall into his hands, he seems to have problems. Cousins is like a coach killer, Jim calls him, Jim Jeffcoat. Wherever he goes, the coaches get fired. Really great for the Redskins, but not so much for the Vikings. So that's about the second tier, Pags. Do you think Minnesota unloads Cousins? He's got a big contract. He's got like $35 million due this year. I don't know if any team would take that on, but I could see Garoppolo moving somewhere, and maybe even Tannehill. Wentz, he's in the second tier, but I don't think he's even a second tier quarterback, if you want me to be honest.
Well, I seeing that again puts it right to the same line. As you talk about Cousins and Minnesota, $35 million. Well, they both got $35 million contracts. So trading those two would be symbiotic a little bit. And again, the support factor in Minnesota from North Dakota State, and maybe just because he's closer to home, that may actually, bode well for somebody like Carson Wentz. I feel like that he needs more support around him, and that's part of the issue that he's had. When he was in Philly, he felt like he had no support. When he's been in Indianapolis, obviously he's only there for 1 year. He had a pretty good year. Of course, his worst two games were the last two games, where it was like, okay, now we're going to rely 100% on you to do this, and he didn't do it. And now it's your fault now. But it's like it's ridiculous to me to blame it all on him because, that coach was really the cause of the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. Well, no, the Eagles team was the reason why the Eagles won the Super Bowl. You can't just put it on Frank Reich. So ultimately, Frank Reich hasn't done anything over in Indianapolis. So you could say all you want to about how Frank Reich was the architect of the Super Bowl. The truth of the matter is that he hasn't shown that moving forward. And how much blame do you put on the rest of the Indianapolis Colts that you can take away a little bit from Carson Wentz? If you want to point the finger at one person, okay, well, Carson Wentz is the easy one because he was the one new guy that came in, out of nowhere and led me to this point, but just couldn't get us past that point. And I don't know that was fair. So if you want a new start, you send him up to maybe Minnesota or Green Bay, where I think he's going to have a lot more support from outside sources. I'm not talking about team support. I'm talking about friends and family and things like that. I think that's important sometimes that gets lost, that these guys are humans, and they need that extra support that sometimes you don't see on a football field.
Some more than other. I call Wentz the Ben Simmons of football right now. So anyway, I think Garoppolo has a starting job next year. I think San Francisco moves on from him, gives the kid a shot. I don't know if it's a good idea or not. We'll find out how good the kid Lance is. I haven't seen anything that makes me think he's going to be great. But of course, he was a rookie last year, and he only got certain chances to play. So we'll see. I don't necessarily agree with you with Love in Green Bay. He really hasn't had a chance to play either, Pags. I mean, he played a couple games. He hasn't had a shot to really prepare for a game and see what he could do. Well, I'm holding judgment on Love until I see him actually play a few games or 4 games in a row or something before I say, he's not going to be good. I don't know really, as a matter of fact. I want to see, with him prepared, taking first team snaps, involved in the game plan. He's the guy. I'd love to see Green Bay give him a shot for a few games, at least to see what he really got. There's a third tier to this that's really interesting to me, right? You got Fitzpatrick who's sitting out there, who's the journeyman who can, he can either have a great game or a bad game. But he is a winner. I mean, the guy where he goes, he plays, he wins game. You got Bridgewater. If Rodgers does go to Denver, Bridgewater's out of a job. Will he ever start again? He's been on like 4 teams. He started for the Jets. He started for the Vikings, got hurt. He started for the Saints and then did really well. And then he moved to Denver and kind of fell off. Is Bridgewater going to ever be a starting quarterback, Pags, again, you think?
No, and unless due to injury or anything like that, and not like I said, I feel that he's had his time, and obviously he's a good fill-in, but he's a stopgap. He's a Band-Aid to get from point A to point B, and I don't think that that's, if you call that guy a starter, then maybe. When you talk about Fitzpatrick, Fitzpatrick is kind of interesting. I think of him as somebody who maybe fit in really well with the Eagles. I feel that, because you put in Gardner Minshew in the mix of that, and I feel that there's going to be a trade that Gardner Minshew is actually going to be able to compete for a starting job, and I think it's going to be across the state in Pittsburgh. I feel like that he's going to have an opportunity over there to take the reins away, because I think that his attitude and his personality does well with Pittsburgh people. And I feel that may be something that they would try to pursue, and they would get him really cheap for a 5th or a 6th round pick and get him over there and see what he can make happen. That being the case, I don't believe that the Eagles are going to draft a quarterback, and if they do, it's going to be a 4th or 5th round pick. But that Fitzpatrick would be kind of like the guy that they want, somebody who's seen it all and for a lot of different teams, seen a lot of different things, and that he would be able to help mentor, again, Jalen Hurts to see if he is going to be the guy that moves forward with the Eagles. Again, I brought this back to Philadelphia, but I feel like that's kind of a good fit for him. And same thing with anywhere else he would go, that I feel that he's going to have an impact as a backup, helping a new quarterback figure it out. So like we might even be up in New England, because that would be something that Belichick kind of likes, you know what I mean? That he's that other coach to help get, move along their quarterback. Obviously he was a rookie, he got to the playoffs. He didn't do well in the playoffs. And, you need that. They took a step, it was growth, and now you're going to come back better. And you want as many pieces as you can helping you to get to the final goal, which is the Lombardi Trophy.
The missing man in here, Mitch Trubisky, who took a year off and went to play backup behind Josh Allen. I think he wanted to learn from their coaches and maybe from Josh Allen. He looked like he had loads of potential, Pat. He's got a good arm. He's a great athlete. The Bears just, I don't know what the hell the Bears are doing. I haven't known what the Bears are doing for the last few years. Does he come out from behind Josh Allen now, and does he try to get on a team and maybe fight for a starting quarterback job?
You could put him in that category. You could put Dwayne Haskins also in that category. He's another one.
I'm not sure of Dwayne. He had a shot, and he just throws too many interceptions, Pags. Way too many.
You know what? But I think that, again, it was a rookie. He learned. They pushed everything on him. He was the everything. And, of course, he threw interceptions. So, now and then he, of course, had the off-the-field antics that caused everything to happen like that. But I think you grow. I think as you get older, you start to see and you grow some. You're supposed to get better as you go along. I can't say whether the gentleman is going to be any good or not. You know what I mean? But I think you could put him in that same category as Trubisky. As well, is he, could these guys be dark horses somewhere else and take a team to maybe the playoffs? You know what I mean? Because I don't know that these guys are Super Bowl quarterbacks, but they could elevate a team that's not doing so hot.
It's interesting you bring that up about Hastings. About Hastings, because Hastings is all set. He's gone. But about now I forgot his name. You just brought him up. No. The other guy that you were just talking about,
Minshew, Trubisky.
Trubisky, and anyway, the guy that played for Tampa Bay, starting quarterback, threw way too many picks. Yes.
Yeah.
Ah, my God, I can't remember. I got a brain freeze. But anyway, this guy here, I can't get his name. It's right there. He played for Tampa Bay, threw as many interceptions as touchdowns. You know who he reminds me?
He backed up in Tennessee. He was the backup in Tennessee.
He was a backup at New Orleans.
Got you. Okay.
Okay. So. Damn, I wish.
It's blowing my mind right now too.
Oh anyway, he played for a national championship. I mean, he was supposed to him and
Winston.
Jameis
Winston.
God darn it,
Thank you. That's the name for my TikTok people.
Well, there you go. You got producers over there. My producer left. James and Winston. There's a parallel to me with all those interceptions and touch. He could have been great, right? He had the arm. He had a little bit of athleticism. You know what he reminds me of? Jim Plunkett. Jim Plunkett played for the Patriots. He was Rookie of the Year, and then got terrible. He moved on from the Patriots, I think, to San Fran or L.A. Then he ends up with the Raiders, and he wins 2 Super Bowls. First, the backup, the guy gets hurt. He goes in and wins the Super Bowl as the quarterback twice. And Winston kind of reminds me of this guy. The parallel is pretty cool with that. And we'll see if Winston can do something too. Maybe become a backup somewhere else and maybe get a shot at a good team. And maybe for that one run of 3 games can wow him just like Plunkett did. That'd be interesting to me. But first, let's talk. Well, lastly, too, because we're getting close to the end of the show, let's talk a little bit about free agency in the NFL right now. The Rams had their parade. The GM was wearing a shirt, F the draft, right? The Rams put it together. A lot of players, as Tampa Bay did really the year before, go to the Super Bowl, win it, picking up free agents. Is the NFL going to start getting like the NBA? I mean, some teams, of course, build through the draft. KC did. But the last 2 teams have gone to the Super Bowl relied heavily on free agency. Is this going to be a new trend? Because, football loves to copy the winning teams' bags. So does another team do the same thing, go all in for 1 year like Tampa did in the Rams, and this kind of becomes a new way with the NFL?
I think it's been trending towards that way anyways. However, I feel that free agency has always played a big part. I think one of the things that you are going to see more frequently now than you ever did before is trades in the middle of the season. These teams that just throw players on waivers. I mean, obviously, OBJ just getting dropped by his team and going to the Rams. The fact that no other team picked up the rights to him was ridiculous, that the Rams had the opportunity to do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So he could have gone anywhere, where had he not played in that first half, did the Rams win that game? I don't know. You know what I mean? He was obviously he was on his way to being the MVP of that game before he got the ACL injury. So, and my thoughts is that, I mean, they traded for Von Miller. They put all their ducks in, the eggs in one basket to be able to get to make that push. And ultimately, it made a difference. You know what I mean? Had they been able to do the same thing, had they played against Kansas City, I don't know that, because their offensive line's a little bit better. You have a little bit more, mobile quarterback with Mahomes. So, I mean, it could have ended the exact same way. It could have ended much differently for Kansas City. We won't know that because obviously Joe Burrows was able to win that game. So, I think free agency is what it is. I feel that still, if you want to win in this league, you do it via the draft. Again, my feelings wholeheartedly on the draft is you draft big men and very specialty. So that's why offensive and defensive line all comes from the draft. You don't get that in free agency because you keep those guys in-house. You build that team within house, offense and defensive line. You deal with cornerbacks also in the draft. You know, every once in a while you can get a big free agent name, but for the most part, you're doing that within the draft. You got to do that in the draft, and then quarterbacks happen within the draft. The fact that these are carousel quarterbacks right now, I don't like that. I think that really pushes you back some. I mean, the reason why Brady was able to go from the Patriots down to Tampa Bay was because Winston didn't have the running back or the tight end that he was able to play with. So they had a pretty good team around them. But, you know, it was Brady that brought in, you know, Fournette and Gronk. Well, once you add those two players, and now you got Brady, well, had they brought them in for Jameis Winston, I bet you Jameis Winston would have been a lot better too. So
I don't know about that, Pag. I think Brady is not. I mean, you can't compare Winston to Brady, but I agree with you for the most part. I mean, you know, you look at OBJ when he went in the last 6 games at 7 touchdowns. I mean, he was well on his way to doing something, which may say something about Baker Mayfield that also is in jeopardy of losing his job. So let's get to the draft.
But you have Cooper Kupp. You have Cooper Kupp on the other side of him. So you got to be able, like that's the difference.
You had Landry on the other side of OBJ too.
Yeah, Landry's not Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, not this year. He wasn't anyway. So let's get to the draft real quick before we close it out. The Giants got the 5th and 7th picks. The Eagles got the 15th, 16th, and 19th. I mean, a lot of picks between these two teams. My opinion, the Giants need to get at 5 the best player available. I don't want to see him getting a lineman even at 5. I want him to go get a changer. Well, I don't care what position it is. I don't care if it's linebacker, wide receiver. I don't care. Just somebody that can be a game changer. Then maybe the 7th pick at the offensive lineman, which they need. What are your thoughts on the Eagles?
I hear a little bit of rumblings that there's possibility of a trade. That Detroit is mentioned that they are interested in trying to, you know, maybe trade out. I would not mind seeing the Eagles trade like the 15th and 19th pick along with like Andre Dillard to Detroit for the 2nd pick. You know, I think that you know, they may have to throw in a 4th round pick in the mix of that because they do have 10 picks in this draft. And then go after the defensive end from Michigan.
Hutchinson?
You know, I think that, Hutchinson I think that would be a great move for them. Again, that's what I like. I want to see an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, and a cornerback for the 3 picks if they keep them. I feel like they're going to trade out of one of these picks, and they're going to get more capital next year as well, just in case the quarterback doesn't seem to work out here. They're going to want to have a 2nd first-round pick. So I kind of believe that there's a possibility of that happening as well. I just, you know, again, I like big men. They don't make big men too often. Yeah, big men that can actually be game changers on an offense and defensive line. Like when you have those two solidified, then you have a much better chance of going ahead and winning a championship. That's where the championships are won, at least in my mind.
Agreed, Jack. I agree with everything you said there. That's your real core. The other ones can kind of come and go, but the offensive and defensive line, if you can keep them together and they can stay there for a few years, you got a real good shot at making a run. So, folks, thanks for joining us today. Thanks to the Philly sports guy, Jamie Pax, for coming in and joining me. I always have a great time with him, and he always has plenty of knowledge to share with us. Tomorrow, that'll be me by myself, but we'll have a lot of guests, so I won't be lonely, including Pags will be with us tomorrow. And Saturday, old friend Jay McLovin will be in the Debate Me. Sunday, the big show. We're going to be doing the history of the NFL. We got a guest coming in for a segment there. I'll talk to you about that off air, Pags, because I'll want you in too. So, folks, have a great Thursday, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Mac and Jack Sports Show.